Hi, hello. Welcome back, everybody. All right. All right. I spent 10 hours translating yesterday. This was definitely, it's getting harder and harder. And it's not just about the translation, it's also the ideas are quite complex and they're quite in depth. And I've been trying to think about how we can apply them and how we could use them. So yeah, it was a fun day. I was on an airplane most of the day, several airplanes and airports and doing all that. So I first think we should probably could start reviewing where we were on Monday so we can understand the context because it's the conversation is ongoing. So it's if we don't have in our mind where we were, it's hard to follow what's happening next. So we had we had a description of because what we're trying to do is we're trying to determine what it is if there were such a thing as a self-existent me, right, or a self-existent self, like or a self that's coming from its own side, a self that has some nature of its own. If it has that, and if it were to have that, what would it look like? And so what we're trying to figure out is what that looks like and how it appears, like the different ways that it appears. So then we can figure out, oh, okay, that's what I need to deny. Like when I'm looking for emptiness, when I'm looking for what the self is empty of, I have to figure out what it is first. If it were to be something that it is, okay, right? We have to establish something that's would be there to then deny that it is there, right? And that's the whole thing of the extremes, right? We think if something existing, it exists from its own side. We think it's existing by definition. And so we have to figure out what does it mean if something were to exist and existed by definition, what is that thing? And then secondly, once we kind of establish that, then we have to say, all right, how do we even access it? How do we have a view of it? How do we have a look? How can we observe it? Can we observe ourselves in that action of selfing ourselves? Okay. How do we interrupt it or how do we even notice that it's happening, and what are the examples that Pamoka gives us is going to be giving us a lot of examples of what it means to look at ourselves, and then what different type of self is appearing and which one is the one we have to deny. Okay, so if you remember, because I know you all remember every little detail, yeah, it's like yes, there's three general ways. Like there's three different ways that we define the way the self is perceived. Like how there's three different types of ways. And the first way relates to those who have seen emptiness, and those who have seen emptiness directly. So this is where most of us, I don't know who you are, but most of us are like, yeah, we're just talking about this is just one way, but we're not talking about ourselves. We're talking about, the aspiration, the goal. But the people who have seen emptiness directly, they see perfectly that the self is just merely labeled by a mind in relationship to the thing that's being labeled onto, and that it's not truly existent, meaning it doesn't exist from its own side. And so, if you were in the previous class about the mind only, we have these two concepts, and it plays out similarly in the middle way, but it's slightly different. So, in the mind only, you have this thing called a kuntak. I know all of most of you were there. I think some of you were there. And then you have this thing called a shengwang. And then what happens is you have this object that you then put the kuntak onto, right? So you have a shape, right? You have a baby boy, right? And you put a name onto it. You call it boy, right? Or you call it tashi, or you call it whatever you call it, right? So there's this thing that exists in the mind only school. And then you put a label onto it, or like you put a name in the mind only school, we call it a name. You put a name on it. And that becomes the name and the dependent thing go together, and you think they are self-existent. You think the name belongs to that object. You act that way, right? You put it all together. That self has that name. It's called, I don't know, car keys, right? Right? This is a car key, right? It's a car key because it does car key things, right? And so you end up putting names, kuntaks onto them, right? And so there is a thing there, this thing, right? And it exists by definition. And then you put a name on it called car key, right? And then that becomes what this thing is. So in the upper middle way, it's a little bit different. You start with this idea, we call it the basis of it, ascription, you know, the thing that gets labeled, the basis. And we call it a basis. We don't call it an object. Why? Because in the middle way school, the basis doesn't exist by definition. The basis is not there on its own. Independence from its own side. Okay. There's still a thing, there's still a basis that you put the label onto, right? But the basis itself, like the basis itself doesn't exist from its own side. That's the only difference, because this has parts as well. It has a left and a right and an up and down. And it doesn't have to be like in the mind only school, this is a car key, right? It is a car key. You may not call it a car key, you might call it something else, but it is a car key. It arises independence. In the middle way school, you're more along the lines of it's not anything until you put a label onto it. So there's kind of a time, it's kind of a time difference and an ontological time status where the mind only school says, well, yeah, this was already there, right? It was already hanging out in the room. You know, you left your hotel room and you came back and it was hanging out, right? And it was, you know, and then you gave it a name, but the name was already part of it because you thought it was there, but you were just kuntaking the name. In the middle way, it's a basis upon which the label goes onto it, and then it becomes a car key when you look at it. It's not a car key until you have the perception. Now, what the middle way school doesn't say is it doesn't say there's no car key there before you showed up. It doesn't say there wasn't something there beforehand. You just don't know. You can't establish whether it was or not. It's like Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. No, it's kind of like Schrodinger's cat. Like Schrodinger's cat's in the box, and you don't know if it's dead or alive until you open up the box, right? When you open up the box, then you know whether the cat's alive or not. It's a similar thing. Like there's a cat in the box, but you can't determine there's a cat in the box until you open the box. Okay, it's a little bit different. So that's why in the middle way school, we use the idea of basis. You are putting a label onto something. You're putting a label, you know, it's like all the parts were there. And then there's the last part, which is your seed opening up, which is actually kind of lower middle way, you know, but you can start sorting it out. Right. And then thinking through the differences. What is the difference between saying something is there dependently first, free of a kuntak, maybe. Then you come along and you put kuntaks onto it. Versus coming in the room and then looking at a few indicators, like, you know, some, right? You come in and you're like, there's some roundness, right? There's some blue, there's some roundness, there's some clear, right? And you go, oh, that's a jar, right? We still don't know what's in the jar, right? But I can, you know, some indicators show me that there's something in the jar, right? And here's the jar, right? And so the jar has, this happens to have raw honey in it. Okay. Why does Tim have a jar of raw honey in his hotel room, you might ask? Because stupidly, he opened it up at his friend's house and he was like, oh, he wants to taste it. And so he put his finger into it. And my friend was like, what are you doing? And after I did it, I was like, oh, that was really dumb, wasn't it? And she was like, yeah. She's like, it's raw honey. It's like, uh-huh. So I bought a new one, sent it via Amazon, and I took the old one because it has my germs in it. Her roommate's very sensitive and energetically thought it would be inappropriate. So I got some raw honey out of it. But that's not the point. The point is that you come in, right? And was this jar in the room? Was jar in the room before I opened the door? It's delicious, Tracy. It's incredibly awesome honey. Here's a good brand, made in Baltimore, Maryland. Okay. Right. Was the jar there? Get it? Tracy understood why I picked up the jar. It's raw data, really raw. Get it? Right? The raw data, like you walk in the room and you get some data points, right? You see. And then you put it together, your seed comes out and goes, oh, this is a jar, right? Oh, you know, what kind of jar is it from a distance? You're like, well, it could be peanut butter, it could be jelly, it could be, you know, a jar of olives, which would be disgusting, you know, but it could be a jar of anything, right? But the point is that there's some basis that's not anything yet until you come along and you start interacting with it. But then the question is, was the basis there until you even showed up? Right. And this is the fascinating thing. Like the borders that we see between objects are coming from you too. Right. And that's why people are so fascinated, because people see different borders between things. Right. Artists are really good at it. Like they'll see connections, they'll see objects that the rest of us don't see. Right. And they teach us that there was an object there that you didn't see. Oh, well, was the object there before? You know, that's the question. Was the object there before? You just didn't see it. Or did your seeds change such that there was a new object there? And so what was there before you didn't, what was there before when you didn't have the seed to see it? What about you? Where were you? Who were you before you even saw the new object that wasn't there until someone pointed it out? Right. This is upper middle way. This is where like you can get all like, in your head about it. But this is what happens in, an aria knows perfectly how this really raw data becomes a jar, right? The raw data, they understand that the basis, you put a label onto the basis, which the basis is also being created by your perceptions as well. Ad infinitum, okay? And understands that the self is not truly existent from its own side. So that's one way. Okay, that's the Arya way. If you're in the Arya way, you probably don't need to be in this class, or maybe you do, and so you can learn how to teach it to other people from other Aryas. That's, I believe, Pabonka was as well. So now now there's two other ways, and this is by normal people, so Kewos, right? The one way is that there's a self that appears in an unreflected way, indeterminate, unspecified. And you're not even thinking about whether it exists or doesn't exist from its own side. It's just doing its thing, like just coming into the hotel room, right? This particular hotel gives you popsicles when you arrive. You're just eating your popsicle. You walk into the room, have a nice porch, look out over the pool, right? Sun's, all of those things, right? There's a bed, there's a shower, all those things. You're just doing your thing. You're just doing you, right? So that's the unreflected self. A self, it's there, but you're not really thinking about it. You're not thinking about it at all. You're just doing life. You're not really considering why life is happening to you. It's just happening. You're not considering whether it exists or doesn't exist through any nature of its own. Okay. And then there is a third way, which says, yes, there is a self that exists from its own side. Okay. And that's the self that gets offended when things don't go your way. Okay. When things are happening in a certain way and you get upset about it or frustrated or you're having a feeling about it, and I'm not discounting, okay, relax. Okay, hold on. I'm not discounting those emotions. I'm not discounting those experiences. Those experiences are what inform us. Those experiences give us information and say, oh, I'm taking myself to be like, I'm here and I'm upset and I'm offended or I'm happy, right? We usually don't think it, you don't usually think about it when you're happy, right? But you do, that's what's happening. Like your selfness is appearing to itself in a more self-existent way. It has a nature of coming from its own side. Okay. So those are the three. And so we're really going to be focusing on the two, right? One that's unreflected, where you're just doing your, chilling. And the other one is where you're like, get a little, I don't know, self-pride, maybe. It's like, that's me. I'm me, right? I'm this, I'm that. Right. And so the I-ness, the me-ness becomes a little bit more obvious or pronounced or direct. All right, let's see if we got a good review here. Right. So there's one other thing we need to know. So the self that is kind of indeterminate, unspecified. The one that's not is not caring at all about whether it exists or doesn't exist from its own side, right? This is what we say is like an ordinary mind, right? That's establishing the conventional form of itself, the normal form, the normal self. And it's establishing to its mind validly a sema, a valid perception. It's having just a valid perception of itself, doing its own thing. And I mean, valid perception doesn't mean accurate in the sense of correct perception of the self. It just means it's just chilling out and doing its own thing, like what we do all day long. You'll go look at Telegram after class and you'll be like, look at all these messages. And you'll start answering questions and you'll start sending emails. Then you'll start sending me messages, you know, ACI staff, and we'll just be like normal, right? We won't be thinking about, does myself exist from its own side? Tim, I need this information. Right? Or Louder's like, Tim, you gave me the wrong information. Oh yeah, I typed the wrong email address in. Sorry. Right? Like I'm sure Lauder wasn't thinking about the ontological status of herself while she was writing that message. She wasn't like, I'm coming from my own side and I'm writing an email to my boss who's coming from his own side, you know, and it has emptiness and he gave me the wrong information. How did he mess that up? And why do I have to see this way? Like, I mean, maybe you were a little bit. Like, why does he always give me wrong information? I don't know, right? Why doesn't he respond? I'm just playing now, right? Sometimes I don't. Like what's going on? Like most of the time, we're just not reflecting in that way. The normal, ordinary mind just doing its own thing. The conventional self through a sema validly establishing itself as a self. The philosophical word for normal you. Okay. That whole long thing equals normal you. Day-to-day you. All right. Then the other you, this is the type of mind, by the way, that also performs deeds and experiences the results of them. So just if you cared. Now, the third way we're going to talk about has to do with a self that does appear to itself in a self-existent way through some nature of its own. And then when we understand that, that is the one that we deny. That's the one that we have to apply the antidote to. The one that appears to us as me. I'm having my me day. Like, oh, I need a me day. I need some me time. Right? When you're having a me day or a me moment, that's the one we deny. Okay. And the whole point of this, and I'm going over it slowly and reviewing it over and over again, is that I'm going to say this a billion different ways. But the goal of it is to catch yourself in the experience. You need to have an experience. You can do the blah blah all day long. I can do the blah blah all day long, right? I translated it for 10 hours yesterday. Then I was like, oh, I got it done. I got enough. I'm kind of ahead of myself. Then I was like, I put my head back on the airplane. I'm like, oh, I need a little rest. And then I was like, did I even understand anything I just translated? Like, am I actually doing anything that Babonka just told me to do? I'm just like, oh, I'm on an airplane. The guy next to me has a cold. Thank you for not wearing a mask. Like, my dinner was lovely. It was dark. It was nighttime. Like, was I actually thinking about it? right? And then for the next hour or so, I tried to, as a practice, while I had my eyes kind of closed and kind of trying to sleep, was trying to think about it. Like, can I catch myself in that me-ness, my me, Tim, I, you know, can I catch myself in that between normal Tim, who was translating, right? And then the Tim who's like, well, shit, I didn't even pay attention to what I think he said, you know, or did I pay attention? Who knows? But that's the thing. Like, can you actually have that? Can you have the direct experience? Can you catch yourself being you? And that's the you deny. Now, being you is not a problem. That's not what I'm saying. It's not a problem that you're you. It's not a problem that you're having experiences. It's not a problem that you're reacting. Man, but can you catch yourself? It's more important. Like an Arya would catch themselves having a reaction to something and be like, oh, that's just a reaction. Okay. And then they won't react. Then they will stop they will not continue the seed, right? They will catch themselves in their meanness, the self that they thought was coming from its own side. And they'll be like, well, I know that that's not true. So I'm going to do it this way. Path of habituation until you don't you're over habituated, like you've totally habituated, right? But in that moment, you don't, like, in that moment, like you have to catch yourself, me, right? And that's the great thing about life is it gives you many opportunities to catch yourself in me. Not in me, like your own meanness. Okay. The own I, the self, the one that goes, I am Francisco, I am Fernanda, right? I am Marina, right? I'm having this experience. Good, bad, ugly, neutral. I'm having an experience. Opportunities arise all day long to say, whoa, I'm I'm being a little too me right now. Meaning I'm being me from my own side, thinking that it's just happening. You see. And then that's when you can that's when you can pop that bubble and do something different with it. You know, does your life at the airport change? The functionality of the airplane and everything change? Well, not really, maybe. Like the airplane still takes off, you still like get food, you still sit next to the guy who's sick, you still walk off the airplane, you still have to waddle down through the airport. You got to go out and go get your luggage, and you got to do all the things and walk kilometers, right? Go get your car and then drive to the air, you get to do all the things, right? But what changes when you're doing them? Does the Arya not get off the airplane? Does Geshe Michael like, oh, I'm such an Arya, I don't have to get off the airplane. I don't have to get my luggage. Like, come on. No. Still gets off the airplane, still go gets the luggage, right? Still sleeps, right? But there's a different mentality behind it all. And if we can habituate ourselves to, if we can train ourselves to catch ourselves and have a different mentality, even as a Soso Kewo, that is planting incredibly different seeds with very different impacts. Like, same activity, right? Sitting on the beach, reading a book, right? Meditating, dancing, whatever you're doing on the beach, right? And then, well, how are you taking it? And if you're taking it, you can take it one way or you can take it another way. And if you can take it in a way that plants different seeds, then go still dance on the beach, right? Like that's not the point. Like, and then everything, then the understanding completely shifts of who you are. and who you can be and who you've been stuck being forever, lifetimes. Right? That's what we're here to do. We're trying to unstuck something. All right. Thanks for the half-hour review, Tim. Here we go. All right, so that's where we are. We're trying to catch ourselves in this third way. To be able to deny the object whose defining characteristic is existing through some nature of its own. I'm going to actually show you my translation so you can see it, and interpreters, you can see it too. Which one is it? It's this one. Okay. All right. This line right here. Right. So our corrective measure, our antidote, denies through correct reasoning, because that's what we're doing, logic. By the way, Diamond Way is completely different approach. You're still denying something, but differently. You deny the object. And what object are we denying? It has a defining characteristic of existing through some nature of its own. You take the object as existing from its own side, meaning the self. Okay. Right. The object, where you take yourself as an object. You see you as a self. Get it? It's the perceiver and the perceived. You perceive you as a self. And that self is an object, like subject object. Your subjective state of mind is perceiving the object, the self, as existing through some nature of its own. Okay. Subject, object, all inside you. Excuse me. All inside of you. You take yourself that way, subject and object. And that's what we're trying. We're trying to catch ourselves doing this, right? Seeing ourselves in this way. So then we can say that object is not exist. This object is not coming from its own side. I need puppets. Let me get some puppets next time. Right? This object is not coming from its own side, existing through its own nature. Okay. So that's what we're going to be doing here. But we have to, how do we go from the normal, normal, ordinary, everyday existence of doing stuff, which you still do stuff after you become non-ordinary. Okay, just right. You don't stop doing stuff, but how you see yourself doing the stuff changes. And then we have to figure out how to catch ourselves doing the stuff. How deep is that? Catch yourself doing stuff. Great. All right, let's keep moving. All right. First person to read on my pictures is Marina, WVP.
Lantikinan tute tesu tan ne
Nice.
teso nampata vute nar shenpain.
So this is fun. Ne, se. Okay. All right. Okay. So another way we can say what we just said about the third type. We're in the third type. Okay. all right, is then so we're gonna start mixing the second and third type together. All right. So here we have the source particle ne. Ne. So it's more like so from, when Jesu Jesu Chung, when we follow along, follow after, right? With the automatic way the self appears innately to us. When we just go along with, like we're just going along with the innate way that the automatic way the self appears innately to us. It's just automatic, meaning so automatic we don't even notice, right? You know, I'm saying here tag along, right? When you just, you like when your little brother tags along with you, like just follows you around. Like my 4-year-old nephew just followed me around the house. No matter what I did, he just followed me around. Like that's what he just did, right? So when you just go along, it's just going along with, like it's attached to you, like a perfume, right? But it's already on you, right? It's just on you. When you go along with it, right? Then and then when some kinds of thoughts appear to you, right? So you have some kind of thought. So, all right, you just go along and then you're just going along and then all of a sudden a thought appears to you like, oh, I just ate some food. Nice, I say. Nice, I say. Okay. I just ate some food. Okay. This this line is so simple, like we can miss it. This is how we find ourselves in the mistaken belief that the self is real. Okay. So like if you study Romance languages, you have continuous past and then you have the continuous past and then you have like the preterite. You have like the exact point. Okay. You have this continuous thing that's going on. This automatic thing, perception of yourself, automatic going on that the self is just appearing to you in a general, unspecified way. I'm doing things. You're not even thinking about it. You're just doing, right? And all of a sudden, you know, it's like the kachik, right? In the debates. Someone comes along, yourself, and you say something to yourself like, oh, I just ate some food. Okay. That's how we say that. That's how we start identifying which self we're talking about. Just chilling out. And then all of a sudden, a thought appears, and we use the word appear because it's arising from a seed. But a thought appears and goes, I ate some food. Necesse. It's such a fun little phrase. All right. So kind of get this. Like there's a ongoing self, right? Let me just show you in a big picture. The big picture of Tim. All right. You have the ongoing self, right? It's going, 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 going. This is just innate. This is the innate built-in functionality, your operating system, right? It's just going, right? And then there's a moment in time that you say, I ate lunch. I had a popsicle, right? I ate some food, So think about it that way. This is going this way, and then you have a moment. I did something, right? What does Pabonk have to say next? And then the most important line in all of, well, one of the most famous lines. Ah, Lumila, you're the next one and gets to read it.
Matakma cha
Che.
che chepe lodakte samte simpar che ne
Mm-hmm.
na tro na do chitro doki chava chet pate min kyan tak yo tsamla cha cheta pesolyin.
Nice. This phrase right here, matak machepa. Matak machepa.
Machepa.
This is an important phrase that everyone should learn in Tibetan. It's what we're talking about when we're talking about the mind that's just going along with itself. Unreflected, matak machepa. It doesn't reflect upon, it doesn't analyze, and it doesn't examine. Matak machepa. Right? It's just doing its thing. Okay. So a mind that is just doing that thing. All right. Right. What is it doing? Right. So by or from or something like that, we are just simply content. Simparche. We are just simply content with a self that just comes to be, right? It just means like a self that comes to be in a mind. That does nothing to reflect upon or analyze itself. It's not doing any of these things. Okay. We're just content. It doesn't have to do anything. Right. And this is where most beings are. They don't really think about it. They're not analyzing. They're just content with a self that just comes to be in a mind that doesn't do any reflecting or analyzing. Okay. Then we just take that self to be the one that does things. Okay. The one that just acts, right? It's a being that just is acting. Okay. What is that being doing? And then what happens is we first start analyzing, right? And then we go, oh, this is the self that's doing something. And then we say to ourselves, oh, I'm walking or I'm sitting down. Okay. So we're moving from just sort of unreflected self that's doing things to a self that's saying, I'm doing something. I'm walking around, I'm sitting down, right? Then this becomes the way that we label things. Merely, right? Ming Kyang Tak, right? The product of naming and labeling. It's not, this is the way. It's nothing more than that. Okay. Unreflected self, and then all of a sudden you think I'm walking, right? When you're walking down the street, how often do you think I'm walking? Right? No, you just walk. And then you're thinking about other things, right? You're just matak pachepa, right? Matak pachepa. You're just thinking other things. And then all of a sudden you go, I'm doing this. Oh, I'm walking. Oh, I'm sick. I don't feel well, right? All of a sudden you start labeling things. I am this. I am something. Ming kyang tak yasamla. That's the way it becomes. You become nothing more than a product of naming and labeling because you weren't walking until you said I was walking. Oh, but Tim, when I got home, I was like, oh, yeah, I remember I was walking down the street today. Yeah. But when you were walking down the street, were you walking? Were you saying to yourself, I am walking? you obviously had some awareness of the walking because you can tell the story later. When I was walking down the street, a bird pooped on my head. Okay. You weren't thinking about walking and you weren't thinking about bird poop, but it happened, right? But when you tell the story, you say you were walking, right? And then all of a sudden now you're a being that's walking. That's the unreflected part is the being that's just walking. Yeah, you have an awareness that you're walking. I'm just walking, chilling out. But am I seeing myself as self-existent as a being walking down the street when I'm walking down the street? No, not usually. Not until the bird pooped on my head. And then, damn it, the bird pooped on me. Now you're a self-existent being who got pooped on. Okay. But until you say to yourself, you need to move from the innate view, the automatic view, to the view that says, I am this. And that's the one that we deny. Let's see here. Who's next? Laura, are you interpreting? Okay. We can't hear you? No. Oh, you're
Lanke,
reading. There we are. Now you are.
lanke, lange, nangsulgi, choksam shik, ge,
Na,
difficult.
ngai.
Ngai,
Mhm.
that, nyat, chokpe, lola, lolang, ong,
Lolong. Yes.
lolang, ong.
Lots of prenasals in there.
Yeah.
Tane jokpe lolaong. Okay. All right. So part of the way. So a portion, and it doesn't really explain, and I wanted to do more research on this, and I couldn't find it. I was looking through the illumination of true thought, and I couldn't quite find it. I want to know more about this, but a portion, an aspect, okay, an aspect of the automatic way that the self appears innately to us, right? The way the self appears innately, that automatic way that it appears to us. Future tense then sets the stage, right? This thing happens first, and then it sets the stage. Okay. Okay. Sets the stage for the way that the self establishes itself conventionally. Okay. So understand first, okay. We have this innate way of doing it. And so then the way that the self sees itself in its innate way establishes itself validly. That's all that's saying. It's like a cause and effect. You have the innate way of seeing yourself, and then that creates the valid perception of the self in an ordinary way. Okay, like if you think of how many steps was it? 7, 5, 6, 7 steps of Maitreya, I think it's called. Someone needs to check. Like the way that the way the self becomes a self, the way an affliction becomes an affliction. I think it's 7, and I can't remember exactly. 5, it's in the 6 or 7. Can't remember. Right. So first things happen, you have this innate seed that ripens inside of you. Right. And then that becomes that opens up, and you have a valid perception of yourself conventionally in an ordinary mind. Okay. Makes sense. Got this innate seed, opens up, then you have a perception of yourself in an ordinary way conventionally. Now, let's see what happens next. Francisco.
Onye de la
Onkyang Day.
Onkyande. Lalankie Lang Nantsuji Tava Shingyu Na Samdangma Raka Shal
Uh-huh. Cell. It's cell, like cell board.
Sel Promi Charpana
Charway. Mi Charway.
Mishawe Narang Shingi Suktu Tu Grupe Nang Tu Dang.
Good. So, however, okay, so remember, we're still talking about the innate form of the self, this innate seed that's automatic. And that is what allows us to have a valid perception of the self to an ordinary mind. Okay. So what's going on in your ordinary mind when you're just walking down the street, not thinking about walking down the street before the bird poops on you? Okay. Right. You're just walking down the street with your headphones on, right? The way that it appears, right, by having some nature of its own, right? What happens is that it appears, right, first alongside other objects. Yunang Shen. So like, it's like when you're just walking down the street, it's like you have the music in your ears, you have the other people, you have the buses, you have the sidewalks, you have your favorite bookstore, which I'm going to go to after this, right? All of those things, like all those objects are there, right? And so what happens is Madre par Salpor, okay? It doesn't appear the self, Micharwa. That doesn't Micharwe. Micharwa is just meaning it doesn't appear. The self doesn't appear. It loses its distinctness and clarity. Okay. So what's happening is because there's just so many, it's like just busy mind. Like there's so much. It's like your Instagram feed is like your day-to-day life is just Instagram. It's like object, right? It's like you, person, bus, bookstore, sidewalk, birds, bushes, music, sun, heat, cold, clothes, right? All of those things are all happening, quote unquote, at the same time. So quickly. They're all happening at the same time, right? So it's impossible. It's, the self as it appears to the normal mind is distracted. It doesn't, the clarity of the self, and it loses its distinctiveness. Like you're not thinking of you when you're doing all those things. You're just kind of chilling, right? You're just walking down the street. Right. And so that's how that self appears to us on its own accord through some nature of its own, right? All of this. It appears on its own accord. So to drupa, okay, meaning it just appears by itself, having a nature of its own, but you don't really notice it. Like it's so indistinct. Madrepa doesn't have clarity. Sopo. Okay. Then you have to, like, this is what you should do all day long. Just notice, people are like, oh, just be part of the world. Yes, you are part of the world, right? It's good to notice things around you. Stop thinking about yourself so much, right? The more you focus on yourself, the worse things get. But if you want to figure out how to deny the thing you have to deny, you have to focus on how the self becomes a self. Okay. Don't become too obsessed. There's a whole thing here. All right, so Emily Chen, next line. You got a short one.
상스 미소소 채세 고.
Good. Good. Get it good. It's not go. Good. I want to hear. There you go. So it's important to understand, to recognize the two ni sosorche distinct ways that the self appears to the mind. Okay. So there's two ways that it's still the same self. Don't get it wrong. Don't think there's different selves happening. But think about the two different ways in an ordinary way, the way you just are walking down the street, the way you're looking at Telegram, the way you're looking at Instagram or something like that. And then the way that goes, I'm walking. I just had some food. I just got pooped on by a bird. Okay. And I'm using that example. It's kind of funny, but like catch yourself when you go, I am this. I got something happened to me. Okay. Let's do this next line and then we'll pause for today. Anastasia.
Ngatin hlenke terang rei, kula kundu milamgi. Ne kaptun chedu yukyang kien, tama trepe ne kapsu, koi nansu selpo myong shin.
Okay.
Myong shin.
Good. So just for phraseology, this is a phrase together. Ken tangma trepa. So just knowing that this is a whole phrase here, and your reading's getting really good, and you're starting to phrase words together. But it's ken tang matrepa. So you get that together. All right. So even down to the moments or the time when we're dreaming, it is always present. This automatic way of seeing the self is always present in the mind. In the mind, it is always present. Okay. Even when you're dreaming, that seed is ripening. That ordinary conception comes out. Okay. But Kyung. All right. Now this phrase was difficult to figure out. Kentang trepa, okay, means the necessary supporting circumstances come together. Okay. Like the necessary conditions are coming together. So with the matre, it means the necessary conditions are not coming together. So, and I'll speak about it in a moment. So in that moment, right, when those conditions don't come together, it will not be possible to clearly see the way that the innate self appears to the mind. Okay. Meaning, Kentang Matrepa is an idiom that means in the most ordinary of moments. Okay. So this is even interesting, right? It's not even saying it's not even saying like, look, the self that appears when you say I was walking, I got pooped on, right? Even in the most ordinary moments, this background noise, this background sense of self that's just operating as an operating system. You can't even clearly see that, right? So when Paponka's being like, look, this is really difficult. Like to see that normal appearance. The normal appearance of the mind is difficult to see. You can't even see it clearly in normal life, even though it is present even while you're dreaming. All right. So I'm going to do this last line here when we'll do it on Monday, because I don't want to leave it just there. Okay. But when someone praises us, when someone may criticizes us, ken chempo, when something makes us happy, day, when something makes us unhappy, duk, okay? When those things come together, when those things happen, when we're being praised, when we're being criticized, when something makes us really happy, when something makes us utterly unhappy, right? This is when that self becomes more evident and clear. Self-pornunyogur. All right. When something happens, that's when the self becomes more evident and clear. All right. That's really what we want to capture. When that happens, capture the self that's being clear. I am someone praising me. Yay, the teacher praised me. Oh, the teacher criticized me. Oh, I was happy. Oh, I'm sad, right? Those are the moments where you have to go, where's that coming from? I am that. And then that's what allows you to deny it. Yay, that was super exciting. All right, cool. So go be happy, go get praised, go get criticized. Hate worldly thoughts. Enjoy them because they're your ticket to seeing emptiness directly. Woohoo! Because they help you see yourself. All right, cool. Thank you all very much for joining. Very much appreciate it. And we'll see you on Monday. So, and say goodbye to each other and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Team Lam.
Gracias.
Bye.
Maganda
Thank
din.
you. Bye bye.
So much. Thank you, teacher.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone. Please stay Timotila. Please keep teaching us.
Talk to Jay, talk to Jay, talk to Jay. Namaskaram, Team Lam. We love you.
Wow. Love you too. Thank you.
谢谢老师，晚安。